The Klondike has always swallowed the weak and tested the strong, but tonight, what unfolds beneath Tony Beets' claim may rewrite the very legend of the North. Stay locked in, because what you're about to witness is the Vikings' most dangerous gamble yet. And if you're ready to ride this storm with him, hit that like button and subscribe, because you won't want to miss what comes next. A storm barrels down from the Yukon ranges, black clouds shredding against the peaks, thunder cracking like cannons over Dawson. Wind tears at tents, shakes fuel drums, and sends dust flying through the floodlights. Below, the pit churns like a cauldron. Machines grind against walls slick with rain, their engines coughing under strain. Then the sound, low, guttural, unnatural. The ground itself begins to moan, vibrating beneath steel tracks. Crew members glance at one another, terror written in their faces, because every man in that valley knows that sound means one thing: collapse. Alarms scream, floodlights flicker. The walls of the cut tremble, slick mud sloughing off in heavy slabs that slam into the pit. An excavator lurches sideways, treads disappearing under sliding muck. Men shout warnings over the storm, voices barely audible above the chaos. The Klondike is moving, alive, trying to devour the iron beasts clawing at its heart. And there, above it all, stands Tony Beets. Rain streams down his beard, soaking his jacket, but he doesn't move. His eyes burn into the shifting earth as if it were an enemy revealing its first weakness. To most, this is disaster. To him, it is revelation. Monica rushes to his side, her voice cracking as she pleads, "Dad, pull them out! Another collapse could bury them alive." Crew members look to Kevin for guidance, but even he hesitates, torn between fear and the fire he sees in his father's eyes. Tony growls through clenched teeth, every syllable bitten off like steel. Where the ground breaks, that's where the gold sits. Always has, always will. The Viking of the Klondike is not a man who bows to storms, nor to earth. His legend is carved from defiance, and in his eyes this collapse isn't a warning, it's an invitation. Excavators roar forward again, treads sinking deep into the slurry, as buckets claw at walls that groan like a wounded beast. Welders battle sparks in the rain, patching rigs that look more dead than alive, kept moving by sheer willpower. Water pumps hammer endlessly, fighting to drain a pit that fills faster than they can empty it. What was once a mine is now a battlefield, steel and fire against the living will of the Klondike. And then, through the rain and floodlight haze, something glints, a shine too bright, too defiant to be mud or stone. The crew froze, eyes darting toward the shimmer, as if the storm itself had paused to listen. A heartbeat later, proof came scrambling from the slope. A miner clutching a rock, chest heaving, eyes wide. Not just stone. Streaks of molten yellow ran through it, catching the floodlights and burning brighter than the storm. He shoved it into Tony's hands, stammering, "It's gold! Christ, it's everywhere!" For the first time that night, Tony's fingers shook, not with fear, but with recognition. He had chased this vision across decades, endured collapses, betrayals, bankruptcies, and storms, and here it was, heavy and warm against his skin. Without a word, he dropped to his knees, plunging a battered pan into the slurry pooling at his boots. The motion was instinctive. One swirl, two, and the gravel rolled back like curtains opening on a stage. Nuggets clattered against the metal bottom, fat and wet, far too large to be real. Not flecks, not dust, not even pickers. Walnut-sized lumps of gold that gleamed like captured fire. Men froze around him, watching in silence, their breaths steaming in the rain. Tony lifted the pan, the weight undeniable, his voice low but thunderous over the storm. "Brother, this ain't a pay streak. This is the jackpot, screaming to be taken." The collapse had torn open more than mud and stone. It had ripped the earth's secret wide open. The pit wall yawned where it shouldn't, a black hollow stretching beyond the reach of the floodlights. Kevin barked orders to stabilize the ground. Monica begged her father to wait for reinforcements, but Tony had already strapped a headlamp around his brow. He stepped over cables and debris as if nothing else existed, climbing down into the wound of the earth with only the beam of light cutting through the mist. The deeper he went, the more impossible it became. Walls of quartz shimmered pale under the beam, veins of gold running through them thick as ropes. Dust sparkled in the air like powdered treasure, every stone humming with a promise untouched for centuries. This wasn't a tunnel blasted by men. It wasn't a drift cut by dynamite or machine. It was a chamber, sealed, untouched, a vault that nature or fate had buried until this night. Tony's boots echoed on stone as he whispered to himself, "It's been waiting. Waiting for us." Above, the crew muttered, some crossing themselves, others swearing into the storm. Tales too old to be traced had always followed the Klondike. Riches too great to be counted, veins swallowed by landslides, men who found treasure only to vanish before they could spend it. Curses, they said. The earth gave, then the earth took back. And now here was Tony, descending deeper, as if daring that curse to show itself. When the machines returned to life, they didn't mine. They raided. Excavators tore into walls of glittering quartz, teeth clanging against veins that bled gold dust and nuggets. Slabs cracked free with the groan of breaking bones, crashing to the cavern floor where loaders scooped them into waiting boxes. But no box could hold it all. Within minutes, nuggets spilled over the edges, rolling into puddles of water, clinking together like coins scattered from a king's chest. The floor transformed into a river of fortune, slurry running thick with yellow lumps that men scooped with shovels, with bare hands, with shirts torn from their backs to use as sacks. Hardened miners, men who had broken under decades of lean seasons and false hopes, wept openly as they lifted hunks of gold that bent their wrists and strained their shoulders. They laughed, they shouted, they prayed, each man struck by the impossible weight of dreams turned to metal in his hands. Scales groaned under the loads. Trays stacked high cracked with the pressure. The numbers leapt faster than they could be written. 10 million, 30 million, 50 million, each tally an absurdity, each weigh-in a breaking of the laws of fortune itself. Somewhere in the chaos, a crate burst apart, its nails snapping as if from the strain of holding too much. Nuggets spilled into the mud, and miners dropped to their knees, clawing at the ground, scooping riches by the fistful. Tony stood at the mouth of the cavern, chest heaving, his beard dripping rain and sweat. Around him the storm still raged, but its fury no longer mattered. He watched the gold pour from the mountain, as if the earth had split its chest open for him alone. His voice cut through the madness, a ragged growl carried by conviction. "Brother, this ain't no strike. This is a flood, an avalanche of fortune." The Klondike wasn't yielding. It was breaking. And in its breaking, it was offering up the richest bounty Tony Beets had ever laid eyes on. The Viking had faced storms, collapses, and ruin before. But nothing, not in all his years, compared to the wealth that now bled from the living rock. By nightfall, that flood had been hauled into camp. Lanterns cast long, flickering shadows over crates stacked like treasure chests, their seams spilling gold that glimmered like captured fire. Guards stood stiff-backed at every corner, rifles gleaming in the dim light, their barrels following even the smallest movement. Yet it wasn't outsiders Tony feared. It was his own men. Whispers coiled through the night like smoke, carried from bunk to bunk. A man could take a handful, vanish into the Yukon, live like a king. Monica walked among them with a shotgun slung openly over her shoulder, her jaw set, her voice sharp enough to cut. She warned that no brother, no cousin, No friend was beyond suspicion when gold this vast lay bare before desperate eyes. And still, beneath her defiance, fear trembled, because for the first time in years, even her brothers looked at her not as blood, but as the barrier between themselves and unthinkable wealth. The fever spreads faster than wildfire, leaping beyond the mine into Dawson itself. Whispers in saloons swell into rumors, rumors into headlines. Word of the Dutchman's impossible fortune rides downriver, carried by traders, gamblers, and drifters. The jackpot becomes a story too big to cage. Across the Klondike, men sharpen picks, ready wagons, and make quiet vows to claim their share. And among them, rivals stir. Parker Schnabel sits in his own camp, listening, the weight of envy pressing down heavier than any pay dirt he's ever dug. In one night, his entire season, his millions, his sweat and blood, it has all been eclipsed. But the Klondike is no gift giver. Just as swiftly as it opened its vault, the earth begins to take it back. At dawn, a groan rolls through the cavern, low and deep, as though the land itself exhales in anger. Stones shudder loose, cascading down like cannon fire. Workers scream as a bulldozer, 30 tons of steel, sinks nose first into the slurry, swallowed in seconds, its roar cutting off into silence. Excavators scramble to retreat, tracks clawing at collapsing ground, while men slip on the slick earth, dragged clear only by Tony himself, who throws his weight against the rushing muck to haul them out. The cavern does not relent. Its walls shiver, its ceiling rains stone and mud, until, in one deafening collapse, the golden vault is buried once more. The earth closes its fist around the treasure it had dared to reveal, sealing it under tons of judgment. By nightfall, the camp is silent, but for the crackle of floodlights. The men gather in the mess hall, where crates upon crates of salvaged gold tower like pyramids, each groaning under its own impossible weight. Scales creak, trays overflow. The numbers climb with every load, 10 million, 20, 40, 60. Eyes widen, breaths grow ragged as the final count pushes past $85 million. Hardened miners, men who've fought frost, hunger, and death, stand mute, awed into silence. Some weep openly, others simply stare, knowing they will never again see wealth on this scale. Tony Beets sat apart from them all, his chair tilted back, his face carved into stone by the weight of what they'd dragged from the earth. Normally brash, a man of curses and laughter, tonight he said almost nothing. His eyes lingered not on the piles of gold, but on the dark mouth of the cavern where the earth had swallowed back its share. At last, he muttered, gravel low, more to himself than to the room, this ain't the end. The Klondike's hiding more, always more. The words hung heavy, not just over his crew, but in the smoke-thick air of the Yukon itself. By the next night, they had ridden the trails in riverboats, carried on the tongues of traders and drifters until they spilled into every saloon from Dawson to Whitehorse. Mugs slammed against scarred wood as the cry rang out again and again. The Vikings struck it! 85 million in one cut! The name carried weight, whispered with awe by barkeeps and prospectors alike. Old-timers, men whose backs were bent from a lifetime of swinging picks, leaned into the firelight and muttered it hadn't been seen since the frenzy of 1896, when the Klondike first bared its teeth. But even then, they admitted, nothing matched this. In a single season, Tony Beets had dragged the impossible from frozen ground with his fists and fury, forcing even his harshest critics to concede what they'd sworn they never would. The Viking had done what no one thought possible, and while the world sings his name, others seethe. Parker Schnabel paces like a caged wolf in his own camp, fists clenched, jaw grinding, as word of Beets' fortune reaches him. His million-dollar seasons, his pride, look like children's games beside this avalanche of wealth. The comparison stings not just his ego, but his very identity. All his victories, all his battles washed away in a single headline. Tony Beets, crowned king of the Klondike. Not by fans, not by television, but by the land itself. For in the Yukon, crowns aren't made of gold. They're made of survival, and this strike, this near disaster, has carved Tony's name into legend. But even legends come shadowed by fear. In the same breath that saloons roar, whispers coil in the darker corners of Dawson. Old-timers mutter the stories handed down through the decades. That gold this rich is never taken freely. It is not luck, nor even hard work. It is a bargain. Wealth on this scale is bought in blood. Already the deaths across the Klondike this season rise like a tally against the strike. 6 men gone, swallowed by mud, crushed under stone, drowned in black water. The locals murmur that these weren't accidents, but payments. The Klondike's price. The cavern's near collapse only deepens the superstition. The earth itself groaned, slammed shut, as though warning those who dig too deep. Tony sits in his camp that night, the floodlights bathing the crates of gold in a pale glare, and beside him his children whisper their unease. Kevin mutters, "Brother, the Klondike gives, but it always takes." The words hang in the air, carried on the smoke of their fire, and none can push them away. Men who hours before were laughing, boasting, planning futures, now sit silent, as though listening for the land's reply. So the gold remains, stacked in crates, guarded like treasure in some medieval fortress. Rifles on shoulders, eyes scanning every tree line, for $85 million is not just a fortune, it is a target, painted bright and bloody on Tony's back. Outsiders hunger for it, rivals plot, but it's not only men he fears, it's the earth beneath his boots. For rumors grow louder with every day, whispering of billions more still sealed under the cavern's collapsed walls, a hidden vein that dwarfs even this impossible haul. The crew debates in hushed voices, torn between greed and terror. Risk their lives to carve into the earth again, or walk away, richer than kings, but haunted forever by what they left behind? Tony's eyes gleam when he speaks, hard and sharp as steel. The Klondike don't forgive, he says. Push too far, and it'll bury us all. And though the words are warning, there is fire in them too, the spark of a man who has tasted victory and refuses to let the earth have the last laugh. Because, in truth, Tony Beets is bound to these goldfields as surely as they are bound to him. He cannot walk away. Not now, not ever. And so the legend takes root, not of a simple strike, not of wealth alone, but of a man who wrestled with the earth and nearly lost, yet rose from the mud with $85 million glittering in his hands. A tale carved not in ink or stone, but in the very veins of the Yukon itself. A tale that will be told long after the crates are emptied and the gold is scattered across the world. Because in the end, Tony Beets did not just strike gold, he forced the Klondike to remember his name.